Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We would like to welcome you to Albany State University on what we think is a very, very exciting day. We are looking at some cutting edge technology for what I think is God's greatest part of this earth, Southwest Georgia. So we want to thank you all for being here today. Albany State University has been here for 111 years, and we've always tried to serve the community. But today we're going to branch out in a little different way and reach out to our friends in the ag community in some ways that we haven't done in the past that we think will bridge some relationships and do some major things for our community. In building our community, we always try to think about our students and to prepare them for the workplace. And so today, I want to ask Ms. Danielle Mitchell to come up to give you some words of welcome from our student body. Let's give her a round of applause as she comes.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Agriculture Drone Project Symposium. We're excited about the topic of drones or unmanned aerial vehicles and the many ways they are used in everyday life by entrepreneurs, companies, and agencies. Drones can benefit farmers in Southwest Georgia. Albany State University is excited about using its resources in science, technology, engineering, and math to make it easier for farmers to manage their crops. As an ASU student, I am proud that my school is staying abreast on trends in technology related to agriculture. Right now, there are farmers around the country using drones to identify insect problems, address watering issues, assess crop yields, and track down cattle. Albany State can help area farmers do the same and save them money. Please ask many questions. We are here to assist you. Welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
He gave me a little bit of his resume, but he really wants to talk about the drones. But I will tell you that he is an Oklahoma man. He received his bachelor's degree from the University of Oklahoma, his master's from Purdue University, and his PhD from the University of Illinois. Outside of his formal education, I will tell you that he is just he really should be from Southwest Georgia. He's a great family man. He brought his family with him. And yesterday afternoon when they got in, I was looking for him, and they were had gone to the pool and went to some of our restaurants, and I think they kind of like Albany. They said it was a very clean city, and I thought that was pretty good. So Professor Price, we want to thank you and welcome you to Southwest Georgia. I want to welcome you to Albany State University, and we look forward to having a long friendship with you. The folks that you see in this room represent some of the best people in Southwest Georgia and in this country. And we're excited about your presence. We're excited about the presentation you're about to make to us. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Professor Randy Price from LSU. Price,
thanks. Well, thank you, and I'm really honored and glad to be here. I really haven't seen much of South Georgia. My wife is actually from the Florida area, Panama City, so she was real enthused when she heard, I might have something I could do over here. She's like, oh, you need to do that because I want to go with you. So she actually used to work in Atlanta, and she, I guess, really enjoyed it when she was there. So I will mention this, though. I didn't tell Clifford. I grew up in Oklahoma, but guess where I was actually born? Wasn't in Georgia, but I was actually born in South Carolina. But I only spent a year there, so I don't really remember much about that. So anyway, I'm here to talk a little bit about drone and UAV technology today. We were lucky in that I work for the LSU AgCenter over in Louisiana, at Louisiana State University in Louisiana. And one of the things they did for us was we were really lucky early on to get some funding to buy one of these drones and start doing some things with it. We probably, as in here, everybody's been hearing about them in the news, and we've been getting all kinds of questions from farmers about what can I do with this, how can it help me, researchers and everybody. So we were really lucky to get one of these. Now we got one probably less than a year ago, and we're up to about probably 7 or 8 units now within the state, or more within the state. We probably have about 13 total. So they're really not that hard to get, and hopefully after you see this presentation, you'll have some information about what they can do, how they can help you, and where you can even get one. They're pretty inexpensive right now. From what we've seen, I won't talk about all the research we're doing, but the technology, at least the drone technology itself, looks really, really good. There's still some hurdles with the FAA and flying these. Right now you can currently kind of fly them yourself on your own property, or if you're an individual farmer, you can buy your own and fly that. But the consultants who want to buy one and then charge for it to fly acres, They're really not sanctioned for that use yet, but we hope that'll be coming soon. So anyway, I'll go ahead and start with my presentation. Feel free to ask questions while I do this. If I recognize you, I'll go ahead and answer that if I can. I'll try and talk about the definition of UAVs. There's been a lot of talk, and you'll hear a lot of different names, so I'll try to explain that a little bit. The current FAA rules, we try to go over those because like everybody, we're trying to keep in tune what the FAA has. They're governing the airspace, trying to prevent collisions between planes and especially these drones. And so we're trying to be attentive to what their needs are and do what they say. Typical manufacturers, we'll show you some of the different units that are out there because it's amazing. I don't think people realize how many are out there if you get on the internet and start looking around. There's probably more than 6 to 8 companies on the internet that sell these things. We think we've kind of found the best ones, so we'll talk about that. And they may not always be the best ones, but they're the ones that you can afford. They're pretty easy to build and they'll really help students. We'll try and talk about what's available in the different sizes a little bit. That's really kind of where my testing's been at. We are not really in the development of new sensors for them. We're going to start that next year. In fact, we've got all kinds of interest on what you can do with them. But this year for us was really just to get them started, get them going in Louisiana, and get to the point to where we can put sensors on them to start doing a lot of things for farmers. We'll talk about the ones we've been using, and then we'll show you some of the data you can get with the units. That's always a question of the farmers about what can you do, what can I expect from this unit, even the researchers. So we'll try and go into that. Different names. Well, you've heard everything from drones to UAVs and UASs. The official name that the FAA and the Society of the AUVSI, which is a society that's kind of become a society in America for not governing these things, but like a depository of all the information, they're really going to start terming them UASs. And the reason for that is a UAS is an unmanned aerial system. And the reason the FAA wants this is because they've decided that it's a little bit more than just a vehicle that you're flying over your farm fields. The vehicle may just be the airplane or the helicopter or whatever that is. But usually with these systems, to make it work, there's a lot more involved. There's data transfer down to a link of a computer. There's a remote control where you control it. A lot of times there's real-time video that you're sending around. There's a flight computer on this, there's a GPS on this, there's all kinds of accelerometers and sensors to help it keep level. So because of that, for the future, they're going to start calling them UAS systems. Now, I don't care if they're called UAS, UAVs, UAV is just an unmanned aerial vehicle, drones, whatever. Some people don't like the drone terminology. It doesn't bother me one bit. It really is a thing flying up there by itself. But as you hear these different terminologies, hopefully that you'll know better what they're talking about. Okay, current FAA rules. Well, FAA really doesn't have rules right now, and I'll show you a graph later on about it's kind of sad because there's a graph I'll show where we're one of the only 6 countries in the world that doesn't really have rules for these and isn't using these on a commercial scale where everybody else is. But right now the FAA has been trying to put rules together. They're having a little bit of a hard time because it's going to be a hard integration. And this is why it's hard integration. The UAV you see here that I brought is probably typical of the ones that we might use on an on-site location in at a farming area. And this is one that you would probably drive to the field. Maybe it's a type of consultant would have. He would actually pull it out and say, hey, I want to see over that crop and see if I see a bad spot. So I know whether I need to walk out there or not or go to the next field. It's a relatively small one that he can take off, fly, several hundred feet in the air, get an overhead view, land it real quick, and just look at the images. Well, when I talked to the FAA people, at least the local ones in Louisiana, they said the real concern is not for that type of use. The real concern is that people like FedEx and UPS have figured out that little flight computer on this thing could actually fly a 747. And they figured out that if they put that computer in a 747 and fly their cargo across the ocean, they can all of a sudden get rid of all their pilots but one who just sits on the airplane and monitors the systems. So that's what they're really worried about is as these trickle up into much larger vehicles and things that will cause pose a real safety risk, the people and other airplanes. So that's why they haven't really come out with rules, and it's taken a while, is they want to get the rules right if they can at the start to encompass everything that will come out in the future. So currently right now, there's only guidelines, and when I stress that, I say not rules. They actually tried to sue somebody over flying a UAV, a small UAV, a RC type airplane, who took pictures of a university. He got a $10,000 fine, and it actually went to court about a month ago. The judge in the end threw it out because he told the FAA, they said, you really only have guidelines, not rules. So you can't really enforce guidelines. So they are under pressure to get the rules in place if they can. So just to mention that. Currently their rules, their guidelines I should say, their guidelines is that you try and keep it within line of sight. And that's so that you can take over if you need to with the radio in case you see an imminent collision with an airplane or a building or a house or something like that. The other thing is they want to keep it out of commercial airspace, so they want them flown at relatively low altitudes. Usually that's like 400 feet or so. Now, I talked to a lot of civilian pilots, and anything below 1,000 or 2,000 feet is actually considered Class G airspace, and they consider that to have all kinds of obstructions. So most civilian pilots don't fly under 1,000 feet as it is, except when they're near an airport and they're taking off and landing. So because of that, the FAA asks that people not fly these, especially ones with autonomous capability, within 3 miles of an airport. So we were going to try and do a demonstration here, but we found out that there is a regional airport located not too far from here, so we probably won't be able to do that. But later on, if people want to see it, we'll fly it inside the building. I do have some good video of it taking off and landing. One of the neat aspects of these units is they automatically take off, fly a route, and land without any human intervention. And it is really amazing to see how well they do that. It's just quite amazing. Every time I go visit a farmer, I usually have this in my university truck. I'm asked to fly it just so they can see it. So it really is an amazing tool. And there's going to be all kinds of things you're going to be able to do with these that people are going to find as utility with these vehicles. Okay. Talk about the economic potential. I'm not going to get into this too much. You can just think of all the different things that you're going to be able to do with this. Everything from aerial imaging to, you've even heard of FedEx and people like that carrying packages and stuff. These are going to probably really change life. I think it'll be a really large industry in the U.S. Everything from pilots and people who fly them, to the maintenance of the systems, to the assembly, to the people who sell them, to the people who actually use them, such as farming consultants. I can think of no better device that a consultant's going to be able to get his hands on, except for one of these UAVs in the future. This tool is going to allow him to probably pull up to a field, get a quick overhead shot, and then come back down and quickly decide whether he needs to go further into that field to look for, problematic symptoms such as insects or disease and things like that. So it's really going to help out in all areas of industry and research and everything else. One thing you should note below, all of these say that precision agriculture, and this is where it helps farming, is going to be 80% of the use, at least the immediate use, of these vehicles. Right now there's a big need. I've done remote sensing for the last 20 years in agriculture, and the biggest thing we could not do was get reliable images of fields. For instance, we started out with satellite. Well, satellites have a 1 week frequency over a spot in the US. So you would try and get an image. If it was cloudy that week, you had to wait next week. Well, if it was cloudy that week, you had to wait the week after that. Well, if it was cloudy that week, you had to wait one more week. Well, you farmers, how quick is the growing season out there when you need to make adjustments? It's almost on a weekly basis. If you don't get an image per week, you're probably not going to make adjustments you want to make. So that didn't work. So then we tried airplanes, agricultural aircraft, Cessnas, things like that with cameras. And at first that sounded like, something that could probably be done. But in the end, we still had the same problem. The person who had his camera was maybe a few hours away from the site we wanted to take photos. We would schedule a date. He would fly over, and then it would be cloudy that day. Or for some reason, he couldn't get the photo. Then he would go back, and if it was an agricultural airplane, he was busy doing spraying, because that's where he makes his money. So we couldn't get another flight. So even that system, as good as it seemed, didn't quite work. So we're hoping that these UAS systems will really help out in that area, and that you're going to see ones where you can really quickly get an image or images of your farm field, and now be able to at least document where you need to diagnose things that are occurring in the field. Immediate uses into farming. I just compiled these, and we're kind of new to this too. So, we're getting a lot of feedback from what farmers think they're going to do with them. At first, we thought it was going to be all imaging. But from what we're finding out, when we go around and show these to farmers, we demo it for them, we fly it for them, a lot of the uses are in like real-time imaging and smaller stuff that we hadn't thought about. For instance, up in northern Louisiana, there's a lot of flood irrigation done. So, there was a real need in that it's hard to drive back behind the fields. They're so large that they have to run over their quarter drains, or it's too muddy to get to the back of the field. So they really just guess when the flood irrigation reaches the back of the field. So we have constructed a couple of these that are sitting at farmers' fields right now in farmers' hands, where they're actually using these units with real-time video. He has a little video system in his truck. He uses a screen in his truck. He actually manually flies it or automatically flies it to the back of his field, and he can see how far the irrigation has progressed to his field. And he says he can easily pay for that unit in 1 year doing that. Saves him time and labor, and he gets a better adjustment of when he should turn off the water. Now, some other uses we've heard about are we have people in Louisiana who are actually georeferencing their terraces and drains. They actually will take one of these units, they'll put the little computer in a recording mode where it records the GPS units that it flies, or they'll trace it on the mission planner, which I'll talk about in a little bit, and they'll actually manually guide it through their field following either the quarter drains, their tiles, or their terraces. And they're using that to make better shape files of how their fields are laid out. So there's a lot of little uses we hadn't thought of that farmers are coming up with every day. Now, our main use has been to take aerial images of damage. Like we had a field last week that had new pat damage in soybeans. And really what they wanted to do was they quickly wanted to just get some images so they could see the damage and non-damage areas, and they wanted to have that better documented so that when they harvest, the yield should match up. We'll see what happens, and if they do, they'll just have a better case of the amount of area that was affected by this herbicide. So, a chemical company said, no problem, we'll pay you for the damage, we just need a good estimate of the area. Well, these images will help him get a better estimate of what happened there. We had a case 2 years ago where an oil well saltwater holding storage tank had busted. It actually drained all that saltwater into a sugarcane field, and from then on it was figuring out how much of the sugarcane was actually affected and documenting the area. They had no problem paying for it, they just needed good documentation of the area that was affected and how much the yields were affected. So these tools are going to be really good at helping do that. So we think in the future, now we haven't started using this, we got an entomologist who'll probably start trying this next year. They want to use it for spot spraying. Louisiana, I'm sure you have the same problem here. We're getting herbicide-resistant weeds. You want to kill those as quickly as you can because you don't want them to go to seed, because some of them can literally put out millions of seeds. Once you get that herbicide-resistant weed started in your fields and you get a whole bunch of them, it's really hard to control that field. So we're thinking these UAVs may be good in the future. They can't carry a lot of weight, but they can carry several pounds. You may be able to see a weed. If it's a herbicide-resistant weed, say you've done all your spraying, it's later in the season, you fly it out there, you see a weed that's a known weed because it stands above the other crop, you'll be able to spot spray that with a different herbicide. Something, that's even more, hit it with a good spray, that'll kill it. It may kill the crop, but you want to control that herbicide weed in that localized area. So that'll be another benefit. The entomologists really want to work with it to look for weeds and insects. They really wanted something that could fly through a field 4 or 5 times a day, exactly the same route, because they're really interested in documenting how the insects invade fields and how to control that. So we think this will be a good tool for them. Vegetative analysis of field, we'll talk about that a little bit more. I will mention this. We had one company that was looking at, and I haven't tried this myself yet, and I probably need to get out there and do it, but they had actually figured out that the high resolution cameras were high resolution enough that they couldn't see the individual weeds when they were flying the UAV over the field. But if they went back to their office and then they did slow video, looked at it in slow time, and they zoomed up, they said that they had the ability to actually document and identify individual weeds that were in that field, and then they could go back and spray it that day for that. So there's all kinds of uses. We have some other things. I don't know, probably everybody has wild hog problems. There's lots of research being done now to spot wild hogs, and not just spot them, but they actually want to come up with ways to monitor the population. So we've been asked to use these to help monitor the population, even designing ones that can get into a tree canopy. And at first that sounds kind of, not possible. How are you going to get that in a tree canopy? Well, we've actually developed smaller ones, and I see you guys have some small ones, that if you put the shrouds around them and you get the right programming, you could actually probably fly this thing through a hole in a tree canopy. And once you're in a canopy, it's pretty clear except for limbs and branches, and using the right sensors, we may be able to navigate around into tree canopies and help document where these hogs are hiding and get better estimates of the hog population. So there's all kinds of uses for these right now that are being thought up. I'll talk a little bit about shipping. Everybody heard about FedEx. And this is kind of easy, kind of a weird one. And even when I heard that, I'm like, oh, well, who's going to be dropping packages off with the UAV? Because it really can't lift that much, right? But if you think about New York City, how many people have been to New York City? Or Atlanta? Atlanta has pretty big skyscrapers. What do you have? You got lots of people and you got big skyscrapers. Well, if you get in a city like that, shipping and getting parcels from skyscraper to skyscraper may now be a lot easier with the UAV than it would be with a personal carrier. Say I have an important document, like a signed, some type of signed document that I've got to get over 5 miles down or a couple miles down in the city. Well, if I have to hire a courier to do that, he has to go down the elevator, get on a bike or in a taxi, run to the other end, and then go back up an elevator. There's a lot of energy expelled in doing that with gasoline, food, and the courier and everything else. Well, if you do that with the UAV, say FedEx has a little UAV sign on some of these skyscrapers, you say, well, here's a letter, I don't care how much it costs, $20, I just got to get it over there because it's signed. He can put it on that UAV really quickly with a lot less energy, ferry it right over to the next skyscraper, and it does make sense when you do that. It is a lot less energy use. So you'll probably see uses like that. Talk about a little bit about some of the different systems, so you have a little bit of knowledge on that. There's currently about 3 types of different systems. One is these little octocopters, and these are like more battery-powered units. They have like, all the weight of the vehicle is held up by the rotors or propeller action, okay? So they tend to use quite a bit of energy. The nice thing about them, is they take off and hover from one spot and can do pretty much whatever you want. There is some older helicopters that people are putting the same flight boards as these UAVs in these older helicopters. And why do you think they would do that? Well, some of these older helicopters are gas powered, okay? They have the ability to fly up to 2 hours. And there is one company up north or in the Midwest that sells one of these helicopters for pipeline inspection, and it can fly up to 2 hours on one tank load of gas, fuel. So that's a long flight time, meant to do pipeline inspection, fly all the way down a pipeline and all the way back. A little bit faster machine, a little bit different system. The reason you don't see gas powered on these copter ones is because the way they stay stable is you speed the motors up and down really quickly, and that's how they stay stable. So they don't really lend themselves well to gas powered type units. They need electronics and high speed ESCs and motors to accomplish that task. Now, having said that, I will say that there are some people posting on YouTube who have been experimenting building these quadcopters with gasoline type units and having the servo action fast enough on the propellers, variable pitch propellers, where they can actually fly this thing with gas power. Because gas power has a lot more energy, so you can fly a lot longer. So you will probably see some of those in the future, and they're starting to come out. The third type is actually these airplanes. These are just your standard RC airplanes. You've seen them all the time before. They can take the same flight computer as the UAVs, and they can stick it in that airplane and fly the same routes and do the same thing. The reason some people are going back to that is the airplanes can fly so much longer on a battery. Like a UAV is limited to about 10 or 20 minutes of flight right now. The best ones we have of these smaller size ones can do about 20, 25 minutes max, and that's it. Well, those bottom ones, if I put the same batteries, I can get 40 minutes to 1 hour flight time. So if I fly that, I can cover a lot more acres per flight than I can with the other one. Now, the bad problem is we've been experimenting with some of these. Lots of times you got to take off and land with that, okay? If you're out in a farm field, you're never where you want to be for takeoff and landing. The wind's always in the wrong direction. There's usually telephone poles or tree lines along the border roads, things like that. So we've been concentrating on the UAVs just because they can take off and land where they set. But we do have an airplane, and we do crash it from time to time, either on takeoff or landing. So that's the bad thing. I should say a little bit about speed. These only go about 30 miles per hour. People had told us the first one we bought, they said, oh yeah, I do 40 to 50 miles an hour. We actually measured it, it was limited to about 30 miles an hour. That's where these are a little bit better for covering area because they can do, 50, 60 miles per hour. These are some of the units we have. I'll just show you some of the different ones. This was actually a manufacturer purchase unit out of Nebraska. We bought that for $5,000. Okay. Now the guy gave us a pretty good deal on it. I don't think he'll sell one at that price again, but this is what they currently use. And I should tell you, some states this technology is really new, and even in the Midwest it's really new. But it has grown so much there in the last 2 years that when you go to a farming field day, you will see 5 to 7 companies selling these type of UAVs and actually demonstrating them for crop use. So there are some states where this stuff has grown really quickly. Now, Louisiana, to tell you how it went, we had UAVs on the research level probably for the last 3 or 4 years. But until last year, we got one, it didn't really hit. And then this year, it really hit, and we just got bombarded with questions. Since that time, in the last 3 months, we've had 3 companies pop up, including an equipment company that's selling these to farmers for use. So that's how quickly the industry grows. We have some smaller ones. This is one that actually flies really good. This is one of the first ones I built. It's just a little bit smaller and doesn't carry as much as the other one. We got some other ones we played with, like some of these little quadcopters that we bought for play. And then we have some research unit. This is one that my RA built. And this is actually, it's actually a pretty big one. It doesn't look as big as, it's bigger than what it looks like in the picture. So it actually flies real well. It's actually a tricopter, which is kind of funny. It has to take the back motor and actually move it around to hold level. The reason he built this was they were doing some environmental monitoring. Using 3 motors, they were lifting small cameras. They didn't need to lift so much weight. They wanted something that didn't burn as much energy and could go out further. So this one was built to have a longer flight time. It has about 20-25 minute flight time. Okay, now I'll tell you some stuff. When we broke into these and looked at this, we had companies that are everywhere from like $120,000 for a UAV down to that $5,000 unit that we bought. When we started looking at the technology, what we found out was most of these units, even these higher end ones, are built on this free organization that gives the software and the mission planner for free. You can get on this website, you can buy the little UAV and the little UAV board for $250. And if you have some hobby skills, you can put it together. You can get on this website, download the firmware that knows how to fly once you put it in the computer, and download the mission planner that talks to it all for free. It doesn't cost you 1 cent. Now at first I was kind of skeptical because I've used freeware before. Usually it's got a lot of bugs, usually it doesn't work good. We found out that this stuff works darn good. We haven't had hardly any problems with it, okay? And in fact, I don't know why anybody wouldn't use it because it works great. We also thought, well, as they upgrade it, there's going to be problems because sometimes it's good for a while and then they kind of drop off and it's not good. Well, as they upgrade it, we've found no problems with it. It just seems to work better and better, and it seems to have a good consistency of their quality with the software. So this is what we actually use. If you go to DIYdrones.com, by the way, that stands for do it yourself. So that's why they started. This organization has a consortium of people that actually add in and keep the program going. So now there is one company associated with DIY drones. If you look at kind of the evolution of these in America, there's a company called 3D Robotics. They seem to be heavily tied with DIY drones somehow, and they're based in California. Well, if you think about the history of UAVs, where did probably a lot of this stuff come from, and what main purpose did they want it? Like, who probably started wanting this in the U.S.? Well, military is one, but what's the other industry that's not military that probably wants this? How about the filming industry in Hollywood? They got lots of dollars, and they want the best camera platform. They want every camera platform they can get to get as many photos as they can get when they stage a shot. So if you look at a lot of this stuff, it's really kind of been developed really out of California, with the help of the technology and some of the computer and stuff coming over from China and stuff. That's where a lot of the hot spot is in California. So this is where 3D Robotics is, and they actually sell some good units. Now I won't go into the history of this. We've been doing autopilots, interested in autopilots for probably the last 20 years. And it seems like what happens is in America, because there was no rules, you couldn't really start a company that just sold you a drone with an autopilot ready to go. So what they've done with this organization is they've said, well, this is going to be freeware. You get it and assemble it yourself. And there's nothing against the rules for that. So that's what they've created here. And it's done very well. One reason we use this autopilot is because this one has automatic path waypoint all the way from takeoff to landing. We've done all the missions I fly now, like when I do a farmer's field, I actually just put in an automatic mode. I take off to make sure the system looks good, it's got good GPS, and then I flip it to automatic and it just flies the route for me. For those of you who are asking about the route, well, there's a little Google map. You just put little points, you put the altitude you want it to fly, you can drag them around, you can tell it where you want it to land, go to that point, or what you want to happen at that point, and you literally just hit enter and it sends it to the drone, and that drone stores it on board. So that's how all that works. Very easy once you learn it. Flight system, say again, $250. They're real cheap. They don't cost much. To give you a little bit of background, if you do get a drone yourself, decide you want to get one, try it on your own for farming, or if it's the students who get one, these are kind of the main components that we've found that you need. It's a little bit more than just the drone. Of course, you need to buy that. But usually on this, there's telemetry that talks to the mission planner. So you're going to need a computer to run that on. They do have Android versions for free. It can run on your tablet, at least the Android tablet. I don't think they have the iPhone yet. But this system will talk to that. And as you fly it around, you can see a little map of what it's doing. You know, it's nice to know, oh, it's at the right altitude, it's at the right spots, things like that. Usually they do have a radio link. The FAA has asked that, you have a way that you can take manual control. So they've just based it on the RC radios, which seem to work well. They're not maybe as rugged as you want for throwing around a farm truck sometimes, but they do pretty well. Usually I show one battery here. You probably want to get 3 batteries. Batteries get burned out pretty quick, and you don't want to wait on the charge. One other thing, I show a charger. This is a slow charger. Anymore, I say just get a fast charger, okay? We used to have a theory that we would charge the batteries up the night before because it would take anywhere from 2 hours to 6 hours, depending on how big the battery was. What we were finding out was these batteries don't lend themselves to being charged for long periods of time. For instance, like if I didn't fly something I thought I was going to fly the next day, and then I forgot about it, and it was like a month later before I pulled it out, that battery doesn't like being charged. So anymore, we try to quick charge them right before we go to the field. Well, you don't want to wait 2 hours in the field, right? Or you don't want to wait 2 hours in the morning. So we've been trying quick chargers that charge at like anywhere from 15 to 25 amps into that battery. And we've had 0 problems with that, and it seems to work well. I can charge the battery up in like 15 to 20 minutes. It's no time at all. If I got to charge it in the flying field because I ran out of batteries, I can sit there for 15, 20 minutes, drink a cup of water, a Coke or whatever, and it's not much time, so it seems to work well. So those are the main components you need. Also, if you're going to use it for something, you need some type of camera. And we'll talk a little bit more about the cameras that they use on these. This is just a mission planner. It's a really nice program. You can type in Google APM, mission planner, whatever you want. There's actually more than just this one that exists. This is the one from DIY Drones and 3D Robotics. There's like 5 or 6 other mission planners out there that are for free from different organizations. I don't know how well they do or don't work. They all work on the same technology. For instance, like the statements that are transmitted are the same. So if I get a different mission planner, I decide I like a different one, I can put it on the computer and it could talk to this helicopter just fine. So they're all based on the same statements, which is kind of nice. They do have Android versions. I've kind of played around with the Android versions a little bit, but I usually take a full-size computer because I'm trying to get a detailed route. One other thing I should mention. Where do you think this thing gets the map? Gets it from Google Maps, right? Or Bing or wherever you select it, but it gets it off the internet. Usually it's nice if you have a cell phone that has data type internet hotspot capabilities. The reasons for that is I never know where I'm going to be flying this thing. I'll go to some farmer's field and they'll say, hey, you got that drone with you. Can you fly this field for me? Well, I didn't even know it was going to happen. So we'll drive out to the field. Well, he'll want me to do some automated flight. Well, I'll have to open that computer. It doesn't always have the map. So usually the digital phone, the the web hotspot is needed to get that map in there. So you really need that capability. You can do the mission from your office, load it into the helicopter, take the helicopter out there. But from what I've found out, you're never in the exact location you think you're going to be for takeoff and landing. You usually drive over one spot and you're like, well, let's get closer over here, or the wind's in the wrong spot, or you don't like the sunlight, it's shining in your face or something like that. So usually best to have that hot spot with you. I'll talk a little bit about this. You know, part of our purpose was we had a lot of farmers asking, well, which one should I get? You know, there's all these different options. And this is a good option. We've flown some of these and they're not bad. They're pretty nice and they're getting better. Farmers kind of like these because they were only like $1,000. They didn't cost very much at all. And this one was DJI drones. And we've flown them around and they're perfectly good units. I will tell you we've had some farmers use them, and the problem we've had with them is they're just a little bit small for what you're doing, okay? For instance, like if you get in heavier winds, they can't always fight the wind. I'll show you some video where that thing is not very big as it is, but it's bigger than this one. They get darn hard to see when they get out about 3,000 feet or 2,000 feet. So you almost need a bigger aircraft to kind of have visual, to be able to see it real well. The other problem we've had with these, and I hope they get this cured, was we had a real problem, and you should keep this in mind if you get a drone or a UAV. When you first turn the thing on, they have a safety system in that they capture a GPS point at that home location, and that's what's called the emergency come back and land spot, or RTL. So if you have a problem and that thing's programmed right or set up right, it will come back and land at that spot. Well, how many people use GPSs around here? Okay, lots of farmers. They work pretty good, but you got to give them some some time to initialize, right, and find their location. Well, what we found out, people were plugging these in, immediately taking off. And guess what happened? It would set the point somewhere else. So if they got in trouble, all of a sudden that unit just flew off and it was gone. They never got it back. So they had a small problem with that. So I tell people, make sure you let the thing initialize before you take off, or you could have some problems. Now, one reason we chose what we had over this was at this time, they didn't have automated flight with these. You had to manually control it. And we really needed automated flight because I've done enough with farm fields to know that when it gets out over a field, you're going to need automated flight to really fly what you want to fly. We've multiple times tried to fly over features in a field and found out we were like 1/8 of a mile one way or the other. It's that hard to judge the distances. So you really need automated flight to fly over the feature you're going to want to see. But these are good little units. They're getting better. They tell me now they do have automated flight. You can put in waypoints and actually fly that if you want. But be careful about the flyaway part. Now here's a new one that we've seen. I'm just showing you some different ones. I've been trying to contact these guys, and I guess they're so busy that we've never made connection. Somebody told me these are like 20 or 30,000. I don't know. They seem kind of expensive. But this is a really good looking unit. This has got really good antennas, you know, for long transmission, all kinds of things. It's just kind of a smaller unit, but this is a lot of what you're seeing sold out there for doing like small time videotaping of fields and things like that. This is AgriImage. I tell the rice farmers they actually had one. I've never seen it, but they told me they had it. They have one that's actually waterproof and can land in a rice field. Has little pontoons. So this is one that you'll probably see. This is sold out at Tennessee. Talk about a Trimble unit. And this is just to show you the scope of what's being done out there. This is a unit that's sold around the world. It's not really sold in the U.S. yet, and I'll tell you why about that here in a minute. But this is a UAV that they have, and this one's kind of unique because Trimble, you know, they do precision farming, but this was really built for surveying because they know that was their first business, was surveying with RTK, right? Well, they figured out they took one of these UAVs, they could put a little RTK unit in it. So they have really good accuracy, you know, probably inch accuracy on the X, Y, and Z elevations. Then they put a little LiDAR unit in it that's rated at 1/10 of an inch accuracy. Well, they found out they could put an auto mission in this. This thing could fly like a whole square mile in about 15 to 20 minutes and give all the surveyor all the points and features for that whole mile in 15 minutes and reduce the work that a surveyor did in about a day and a half. We had a Louisiana surveyor who actually used one of these. He said the only points they had to survey were the ones underneath trees or somewhere where it couldn't get the LiDAR to go through. He said it was number A1, the best system he had ever seen. He said as soon as they start selling these, they had to test one, they'll get as many as they can because of the time savings. That unit right there is selling, I think it's selling for about $30,000 from what I heard. So pretty expensive. Not really farming stuff, but for surveyors, perfectly good. I should mention, we show a launching pad. That was their old system. Their newer system, they got good enough that you could actually throw the unit up. You would shake it, the propeller would go on, you threw it up in the air, and it would take off and fly its routes. It would actually then come in, and you say, well, it's kind of like an airplane, so how did it land? They had programmed a cyclone type landing. So they would come in about 10 feet from you, and it would cyclone down until it just belly landed. So I just want you to keep informed of those type of automations. When people get programming like that, then airplanes may look pretty good, even for farming use. So you may see some stuff like that. Now I want to show you this graph. This is kind of interesting. We really need the FAA to get some rules and to get some good rules that allow UAV use. These are all the countries in the world, the dark ones, where UAVs are allowed and are currently being sold for different uses. Everything from construction to site surveying to agricultural use. These countries in white are the ones who they're not being sold for commercial use. Currently, either because they don't have rules or for some reason, they're scared to employ them. And the U.S. falls in that, which is really amazing because we're probably the ones leading the race on the development of the stuff for the UAVs. So we really need the FAA to get the rules out and get fair rules that everybody can use. I want to talk more about this because I already kind of mentioned this. The reason we're using these bigger units is really because they have automated flight with the GPS and stuff like that. If you do buy one for yourself, make sure it can do automated flight, because I can tell you very quickly you're going to want that or have to have that. We tell this to farmers. There will be some training involved. You could probably learn it yourself in a day or two. It's not you could almost pull it out of a box and just use it, and you may be able to. But what we found is, like, a lot of times the GPSs are based on the WAS system, and I don't know how many of you have a WAS system. It's really good, but it can drift 5 or 10 feet over, in an hour's time period. Well, what usually happens is, in a farming situation, we take off in the middle of a dirt road. We got a one-lane road because that's what's out there. Well, when we come back to land, it may have shifted off into the ditch, okay? And, you really don't want to land your UAV in the ditch. You could. It's not going to hurt it very bad unless it's full of water. Then it might be bad for it. But usually at that point, you're going to want to take over a flight and move it over to land. So they can do automatic landing, takeoff, landing, in the whole flight. But it's highly likely about 1 out of 3 times you're going to have to fly it just a little bit to land it. That's why you're going to need a little bit of training. The other training is probably to use the batteries. You need to know how to charge the batteries, what to expect, how long the batteries are going to last, what to monitor to kind of know when the batteries are getting low and some things like that. So we usually say people are going to need about a half day to 1 day of training to learn those aspects. But not too hard, and a little bit of hobby skills to maintain the propellers and some things like that. Typical flight parameters. This is really based on this smaller one because that's where we did most of our work early on. Now we're kind of graduated to this one and we're doing most everything with it. But about 10 to 20 minutes flight time. That one really did about 8 minutes. This one could do 20 minutes. But I'll tell you what, you're always so concerned about the battery that usually you're going to fly about 2/3 of what you think the battery can do. Because you're worried about, well, if I run out, it's going to crash. I want to bring it back in plenty of time. I want it to have time. If it's an automated landing mode, it's going to stop and then it's going to come down real slow. It doesn't come down real fast. So usually you fly. So if somebody tells you, I've got a UAV that can fly for 25 or 30 minutes, that's not going to be your flight time. Your flight time is going to probably be about 15 minutes before you recharge the battery because you're going to worry about it. So that's about what they're rated at. Flight speed, we found out, is about 30 miles per hour. Now in automated mode, you can set that up to be whatever you want. Max speed's 30 miles per hour, okay? So what kind of winds could I fly in? Well, probably not over 30 miles per hour because I can't really go any faster than that. So what we found is they fly pretty good up to 20 mile per hour winds. They could probably fly in winds heavier than that. They just won't go very far or very fast, or they'll burn a lot of energy trying to go that fast, okay? We've flown, I'll show you some tests where we flew some in some gust. It fared really well. We did 4 automated flights and we busted the propeller on the 4th flight, but that was in really gusty winds. What we found out is usually if you think it's too windy for you to be out there, or you're starting to worry about the machine, that's probably where it's too windy. But it seems to fly in about any winds. I mean, they're not very dainty machines. You can go out there and if it's a little bit windy, it does just fine. I will say this. We talk about the quads and the hexas and the aux and the number of motors. We do kind of think, and we don't have data to prove this, the more fingers you got out there with motors, the more that it can articulate into the wind and then articulate forward, just the more sensitive it is to hold the line that you're trying to fly and move forward. So just keep that in mind on whatever type of copter you might choose. The more propellers and fingers out there you got, the better it can hold its position in the air. Okay. Weight capacity, usually 0.5 to half pounds. Most of them will raise maybe 2 or 3 pounds by the time you put batteries and stuff on them for your flight time. So area covered, we'll talk a little bit more about that, but what we're finding is, at least for this size here, which seems to be the main one being sold right now, that size, which I would say is an intermediate, everybody else says it's a small one still, is about 40 to 100 acres. That's about it. They don't cover much more area than that. Maybe you can put multiple batteries in it and spend more time, but we'll talk a little bit about the imagery. The imagery doesn't really see all that much because of this 400 feet level that you have to fly under. Can't get higher than that, so you only have so much FOV on the camera. Okay, let's go on. These are the different types of cameras, and we have all of these. There is, a lot of people are used to vegetative index. How many farmers have heard of vegetative index? Well, okay. Use NDVI, or normalized difference vegetative index. It's a ratio of the red and the NIR wavelengths, okay? But if you start to try to buy a camera that does that, you'll find out there's not a lot of cameras that see NIR. Most of them see red, green, and blue, because that's what most cameras are meant to see. Vegetative index takes NIR. For a long time, you could not buy a camera under like $10,000 that would do NIR. Well, we'll show you in a minute that some people have developed a small camera, a regular handheld camera, that they can change the insides to see NIR. And it doesn't see red anymore, but it sees blue and green. And using that, they can give you what's called an EN NDVI, which is a vegetative index. And from our testing, it seems to be very similar to NDVI. So that's the type of cameras that we've been flying. Small portable cameras that are changed to see that vegetative index. The other cameras that we seem to use a lot are just the GoPros or regular cameras that see red, green, and blue. The GoPros seem to work good for video. They work excellent. I tell everybody, if you do buy a GoPro, get the best one. You know, there's a $300 one and there's a $400 one. Buy the $400 one because it just, I mean, it's almost like you were in the UAV looking at the ground. That's how good the colors are in it. So there's little cheap cameras. We do use some of these. We had one farmer that couldn't use the GoPro because it had a little bit of a delay time in doing the real-time video. He was trying to fly it as he looked for the water in the field manually, and he needed a camera that it was real-time video. There was no delay in the transmission time. So we happened to find out that this little $130 GoPro knockoff had 0 delay time in real-time video, and it worked just fine for him. So there's lots of other little cameras that you can use. Here's the specs on that camera, the one that they changed. Turns out the guy figured out that you could take a little filter, and if you could put it in that camera, it will actually knock out the red. Oops, sorry. It'll knock out the red, and it allows the NIR to fill in that position. So then the camera sees red, green, or I'm sorry, it sees blue, green, and NIR. And if I have the NIR in the blue or the green, I can go back and calculate a vegetative index. We've done some testing with that against the green seeker, and we tend to get about the same curve that you get with a green seeker. Now, we're not certain that it's as sensitive as a green seeker, and we haven't done that testing yet, which we'll probably try to hopefully get that done in the future. But for macro type changes in the field, it seems to work just fine, and we're having good luck with that. That camera actually costs about $800. It's a $200 camera, but there is a company called maxmax.com, and they actually will put the filter in for you, but then they charge you about $800 for that camera. So you can keep that in mind. All right, here's some fields that come from that camera, and these are just some typical wheat fields. This is probably the main one you should look at. This is a wheat field that we took, wheat plots that we did at Dean Lee, or in Louisiana. And here's some fields that we did where we got with an airplane and got a lot higher. This one's about 1,200 feet, and this one's about 450 feet. This was done with a remote control airplane where there was no flight restrictions. The flight restrictions are really on the autonomous vehicles. If you have a remote control airplane, they don't really have restrictions, so we took this one up to 1,200 feet and got this photo. And it's not coming in as good, but if you were to look at this, well, hopefully I'll have it a little bit further on where we analyze this. Here's some video we took. This is a typical GoPro. I'll run this real quick. I don't think it'll take long. Show you what it looks like. Oop. Let's hope it works. That'll just give you an idea of what that one looks like. And that was a sugarcane field, actually, where we were trying to see frost damage up in that corner. And you can see it showed up really well in there. So that's typically what you get out of a GoPro. And visually, that's pretty good. So, okay, here's a UAV. Since we didn't, we wanted to demonstrate one, but we're so close to the airport, we weren't allowed to by the FAA. We tried to get a COA, which is a certificate of authorization to do that. And by the way, that kind of works, just to explain how that works. You hear me talk about, okay, I'm trying to get authorization from the FAA, but I just told you could fly them within line of sight 450 feet. If you're trying to fly outside those parameters, which some researchers are, they're like, hey, we want to do research and we need to get 5,000 feet high. You can go to the FAA and you can get a certificate of authorization letting them know where you're going to fly. And if they approve it, then you can get authorization to fly some of these different areas that you're not able to, with the 450 feet height. I will tell you that there are some states setting up corridors where you can fly. Even in between cities, they're setting up corridors where this will be UAV use, and this UAV will fly from one city to the next, and I don't have to get any COA to fly in that corridor. So there is stuff like that being done between states and cities. So keep that in mind. I'll play this video real quick, and I hope I'm not taking too much time. This is actually a UAV that we flew over sugarcane field, and they look exactly like this. And what I want you to note was this was takeoff, and this is all auto. I don't think it was automated flight right at takeoff, but we flip it to automated here in a minute. But I want you to notice how small these things get. And this is why I stress you need one that does automated flight, because I think this field's only about 1,000 feet down or 800 feet, and it gets very small quick. So, now it's going to go up to a certain altitude, and as soon as it reaches that minimum altitude, which I think was 100 feet or something on this one, or it might have been 300 feet, then it goes over and starts running the coordinates to take pictures. Now, I will say one other problem we've had. The picture technology, the camera's there, but getting it to actually snap a picture has been a chore. We either forget to turn the camera on, you get busy getting the helicopter ready and you take off and then you get back and you're like, I never turned the camera on. Or there's some systems, different ways to make these cameras trip, and they're not real well hammered out. Many times, 3 fields we've taken pictures of and never got the picture because the helicopter didn't snap it automatically. For that reason, on all the helicopters I use, I just turn the camera on automatic mode where it just keeps snapping pictures because the cards are big enough, and it just continually snaps pictures the whole time I'm flying. But this helicopter wasn't set up that way. Now, if you notice, I don't even know if I can see it anymore. I'm not sure where it went. I think that's it right there, maybe. So you can see how small that thing was, and that was just for plot work in a sugarcane field. But this was all automated flight. We didn't fly this. It flew itself this whole time. And this was on a gusty wind day. We had traveled a couple hours to get to this site. It was pretty gusty, but we're like, hey, we want to fly it because we drove all that way. So we have found the vehicle's very good at that. It should come back and land here in a minute. Yeah. And what I was going to demonstrate here is I was going to show you that they don't always land where you think they are, because this one started to land in the ditch. This is actually a kit. We found out the guy who sold it, he didn't really just build this stuff himself. Most all these come from a kit. So this is a kit from Hobby King. There's a RC place called hobbyking.com. And then you buy the computer and you just kind of put it all together. But I will say this is one of the better ones I've ever seen built. We've actually crashed this one once. We caught a gutter trying to land it. It got off a little bit. didn't hardly hurt anything. So I think it was actually going to land in the ditch, and I actually had to take over to land back in the road. But that's what a typical flight looks like. They really are amazing when you see them do it. We'll talk a little bit. We'll try and speed this up. We've got enough time, or? Okay, all right. Try and speed this up a little bit. I do a lot of extension work, so I'm used to talking to groups of farmers who want to know everything they can in that 1 hour so they can go back to farming. What we've been finding out is we were trying to take some of the typical cameras and look at what you can see. And if you do this 400 feet high stuff, which is what you should do. I think we ran this one 450 because we weren't really sure of the rule. We can only see about 15 acres per photo. So if you do large areas, you're going to have to put some photos together. And we've been finding that it's not that hard, but it's not that easy either. It's a little bit of a chore to put images together. If you do plot work, it seems to work really well. Here's a composite that was made. You can find these all over the internet. We've done a few where you can take all the images and actually put them back together. There are programs that do this. We found out some of the problems are you have the UAV fly down. When it comes back, it's facing the other direction. We'll have to go to all those photos and actually flip them 180 degrees for the automated program to work correctly. So that's why I say there needs to be more development in actually getting the photos together, because no farmer or consultant really wants to deal with that. He wants it to just take the photos and just get them and use them for some purpose. Here's some of the programs we use if y'all are interested. ImageJ, if you have one of these NDVI cameras, that's not really vegetative index. You still have to get a program that would do a calculation with the green and the blue with the NIR to get that vegetative index. ImageJ does it. We found out this is a free program, but it's kind of hard to tweak it to do what you want to do. There's one called AgPixel. We have a version of this. It's like $300. This one works really well. Now, it doesn't put multiple photos together. They keep promising us that it will, and they haven't got it that far yet. But for just straight analyzing an image, this will do it quick. And probably about, as soon as you can get the image in there, you can get it analyzed. Here's a better photo. So you're saying, well, what can I really see with that vegetative index? Well, here are wheat plots. And you can definitely see where this higher pink area is better growing areas. And then this is a not as good growing area. This is probably caused from soil texture changes in that field. Louisiana, we have a lot of, bayous that have run out of the Mississippi. So you get a lot of stratified type soils. I mean, you can be in one type of soil, walk 30 feet and be in a whole different, type of soil regime. So that's what that's caused from. This was a test we did with the mission planner. We actually ran 4 of these, and you can see how well it flew this mission. This is actually over a rice field. I will tell you, this was in 20, 25 mile per hour winds each time. It did burn through the battery pretty quick because it was fighting the wind. And on the 4th flight, it actually broke a prop. It actually did fly back with a broken prop. It was having a hard time landing. I myself thought maybe I'm a better pilot than the computer, so I thought I would go ahead and land it. I found out I'm not as good as the computer. I probably should let the computer land it. Damage wasn't bad. It just kind of hit the side, and I had to put a new arm or 2 on it. But from since then, I've decided that the computer can actually fly this thing better than I can. We were trying to do some tests for farmers to see what area they could cover, and this might be like a typical area. This is about 3,000 feet. We used up the whole battery just doing this box. The reason I would show this to farmers is because we had an idea that we were going to be able to crisscross a field, like a harvester might do. Hey, we're going to go through the whole field and just back and crisscross and get all these points. Not going to really do that with this. It's going to be more of a straight out, see something, come straight back type device. You might do a box or something like that, but you're not going to really just fly back and forth for unlimited amounts of time over the field. So there is the programming in it to do that. So if we get ones with longer flights, it's pretty easy to put a polygon in this mission planner, tell it your camera that you're using, and you just hit go, and it'll plot out a mission that'll take a photo of every square foot of that land with overlap. So it is set up to do that. It's just getting ones that can fly longer is the real key. Here's an airplane. You can go out and buy an airplane. We did this. We went out and bought a big styrofoam airplane. It was a $400 airplane from the RC store. We stuck one of these autopilot boards for $250 in it, and we actually had a plane that can do autopilot missions, just like the helicopter. And a nice thing about it was you can get a lot higher with this thing. Say we don't use the autopilot part, we're RCing. It's such a bigger device, you can actually see it well at 1,200 feet, and you can see you get a lot more area per each photo snap that you take. So you may well see some stuff like this come back into play, just because you can fly a little bit higher. If you do it RC, you can, it's roughly the same cost as that in parts. By the way, this has got about $1,500 worth of parts in it, if anybody's curious. So I will say we've crashed this several times on takeoff and landing. Monday we were flying alligator nests with both these units, trying them out. We actually crashed that one on takeoff. So there is a little bit of advantage to this one in that, takeoff and landing are automatic and it takes off in one spot. These are some fields we did with the airplane. This is about 1,200 feet high. And you can see we're going to get good resolution here. There wasn't very much variance, but you can see variance up here if there have been variance in the fields. But that's a single photo with that airplane where you'd be able to tell a lot of stuff. The photos actually look better when you see them on a computer because the projectors never have the resolution. I always put this in there because people don't know, but there are a lot of people that have been around forever. And this is Louisiana company. They've been flying pictures for probably the last 10 years in Louisiana. So you don't always have to buy a UAV to get a picture of a field if you need to. It's harder to get somebody to come to your site, but have always been people out there who can fly this stuff. And just to show you, there are a few companies. The one that, just in case you're interested, this one right here built that first UAV that we ever sold. These people are out in Nebraska. Now what they were selling them for, and we haven't tried it for this because we didn't have as many center pivots that people were interested in. They were actually using it to fly center pivots to check on how well the center pivot was working. So they see the center pivot out there going. They could actually put a mission all the way down it and back, before it can move very far. And they could go down and in real time see if all their nozzles were working correctly. So they were doing a lot of stuff like that. Just little things that help out in the farming area. So in conclusion, the UAV systems are pretty mature and available at pretty reasonable prices, we think. We still need to work on the imaging system and what to do with the images. There's still a disconnect, like if you get an image and you see good and bad spots, there's really no one out there that can tell you what caused that good and bad spot. It could be soil texture, it could be nitrates, it could be irrigation. There's a lot of different symptoms. But we do have tools now that are approaching really fast systems to get you that data. So the skills are pretty easy. We had a farmer that we built a UAV as a test, LSU did. We gave it to him. He had no flight experience at all with RC or anything. We showed him a little bit of ways he could fly it safely. He's still flying to this day and has never crashed it. So we're pretty confident in the flight systems look pretty good out there. From our crash statistics, I was calculating this morning because I thought, well, I'll get a question on that. We have never crashed one that's been flying a mission, okay? The times we have crashed them, well, I should take that back. We did crash one because a battery terminal became unsoldered. We did crash one in a flight mission because the battery terminal came off. Other than that, we've never ever had a problem with the computer. There's always been a big fear that, well, these just fly off and they'll fly off for many miles. What we've seen is the computer either works or it doesn't. If the computer is working, it flies everything perfect. If the computer is not working, it just doesn't go where it stays right where it's at, or it crashes right where it's at. And when I say crashes, the setup is a little bit tricky. It's not too tricky, but it takes a little bit of skill. We've probably crashed 2 or 3 as we try to set them up, getting all the flight parameters correctly. There's little things like if the system is too responsive and it bounces up and down a lot, it'll screw the barometric pressure up. And we actually had one that tried to fly off that away. It kept thinking it was going into the ground, so it kept goosing it to get up off the ground just because of the jerkiness of the system. So there's little things like that that play into this, and that's the only time we've ever had problems, with actually having crashes from these. Other than that, when we get them set up and they're flying, that one, I pull it out of my truck, I make sure everything's still plugged in right, like board or something didn't hit it when it was right around the back of my truck, and it just flies the mission just right, never has any problems. So, okay, well that's an awful lot. That's more from the extension side too, because that's been my main job at LSU. But is there any questions? All right, is everybody ready to buy one? No. We did that in Abbeville, Louisiana. Do you deal with those guys?
Yeah, the name.
I don't know the farmer. An extension person calls me up, and it was Mark Shirley from LSU, and then they take me to a farm, and then, of course I shake the guy's hand and get his business card, but I never really take note because I'm always trying to get the UAV system to work. But what that test encompassed was they were spotting the nest with the small, I think it's like a small glider or something that a guy had. a little small plane that a guy had. And he could do it for such and such cost, and they wanted to know if they could do it with the UAV instead. And what we did find out was it was hard to see the nest with the UAV and hard to arrange it. Like, I think you could have saw it in the video we recorded with the GoPro, but we could not see it on the monitor because the monitor was not clear enough in the video that came back. And then when they thought, well, if we take all this video back to our office and then we have to look and it's not like a 100% indication, there's just, you think it was one. He's like, well, the airplane guy can do that all in one step. So that still looked like a better process. Now, not to say we're going to try infrared, and they're thinking maybe in the morning or late at night you'll be able to see the difference in the nest temperature versus the other temperatures. So there may be some other things we'll try, but that's what we found out. Right now I get supported by the commodity groups, and all the money you see here came from commodity groups to do this, and they're funding my research program. In fact, we got a rice grant next year to actually take the next step and tie the green seeker. They've done a lot of green seeker readings on predicting how much nitrates they need in rice, but they couldn't apply it because you can't get through a rice field very well because it's flooded. Well, when they saw this, they're like, oh, the two are a perfect fit. So we're going to do, try and get a real-time analyzation system on this copter and do rice fields in real time, and tell them what fertilizer to put on. We've got a big grant, and we just closed it out. And my RA found this, and this was a BP oil spill money. And he had teamed up with some of the Texas universities and some of the people in Texas who are doing this stuff. University of Nevada, which seems to be really big into UAVs. Some of the universities across Louisiana, like University of Monroe, some of the other universities. And we turned in a grant for, I think it was like $6.8 million for that money. Now, but it's supposed to be for building UAVs that go out and detect oil spills off the coast. And it's probably going to take rather large ones to do that because you could be flying 100 miles out. So, but it's supposed to have automated sampling and everything, like supposed to go out there and take a water sample. So all kinds of things like that. Those are the main universities we worked at. I'm not really, since I've been extension, most of my money's come from commodity groups, and they're the ones that have been funding me. So but I'm willing to work with anybody if anybody's, interested. So, we had cameras all along, even through the 70s and 80s, that would do this vegetative index, but they were all on airplanes or satellites. Well, some people from Oklahoma State got together and they said, we got to make a little sensor that you can use in varying sunlight levels that'll work for production agriculture. And they figured out that NDVI, which could predict nitrates in wheat, varied every 3 feet. So they had to have something, that was high resolution. So they came up with a really cool sensor that actually emits the LED wavelength. The light source comes from LEDs. They reflect it off the crop surface, and it reads it in real time, and you get a real-time sensor output of that NDVI value. And that's what you get. You get straight NDVI. So there's nothing you have to do. You just go out and run through your field. It doesn't care if it's nighttime or if it's cloudy or what the sunlight levels are like. It's just a plug-and-play type sensor. Well, John Deere picked it up, and Entech and John Deere and some other people kind of invested in this. And people put it on sprayers, and they can, going through the field during spraying, if they kind of know some previous knowledge, like if I see an area that's like, usually for corn, if it's irrigated, if you know it's irrigated corn, you know it's not stressed by anything else but probably nitrates. So if they see an area where NDVI goes down, they know they need more nitrates. So they'll go the last time they can drive through a cornfield, and if they see that NDVI value go down on the spray boom, they'll actually dump more nitrates on there. And you can put different levels for whatever the sensor is putting out. Well, that sensor has kind of become more or less a standard because it's easy to use, and we use it out in the field all the time. So we try to compare our sensors to that one since we have a couple of those, and they seem to work well. I would think they are about, I don't have direct knowledge that they are, but boy, everybody I talk to has a use for them and wants to get one. And we were just kind of lucky in that we got one, for our area, we got one really early. We came up with some funds and bought one. And we were lucky in that a couple of our extension agents have been traveling up north, and they kind of seen what had happened in some of the other states, and they knew what had happened there, so they were able to bring that back and say, hey, we got to get one of these and get on, top of what's going on. It moves fast. Like we went from no companies in Louisiana to 3 companies selling them within like 2 months time period. So But to answer your question, I don't have direct knowledge of what they're doing, but I bet they probably have plans for them. No, we have that planned. I'm working with the USDA in sugarcane. I got a really good tie with them. And we're looking at a multispectral sensor to put on a UAV for next year. Seeing if all the funds and everything works out. He's done a lot of spectral type readings, real-time ones in the crop. He's more extension. And we've kind of decided if you're really going to do like identification of weeds and things automatically and to really like be able to see the symptom, not just that there's a bad spot, but to know that, like this is a problem with bugs or this is a problem caused by nitrates, we really think you're going to have to move into the hyperspectral type readings. So we're looking at that. We don't have it off the ground yet. He's done a lot of hyperspectral with handheld units. He thinks he's got kind of good handle on that, and we really just get the funds and get the hyperspectral unit that we can get on the drone and use it. So. Yeah, they're really expensive. Yeah. And it'll still be a little bit of a chore, watering it down to something a farmer can use, because we'll get all these readings and probably, you'll have to figure out what bands are the critical ones to tell this, if they can even tell what we want to tell, and then a regular sensor that a farmer would use would have to be made, or a UAV one that's not as heavy and is not expensive, that uses those wavelengths, to tell whatever you're trying to tell. But he has a pretty good indication that he can tell a lot of different things with hyperspectral, a lot more than he can with NDVI. I will stress NDVI, it's a great sensor, but it is bad about it doesn't always tell you what's wrong out in the field. Like certain cases it does, like I used to work in Kansas. If you had irrigated corn, the only stress was caused by nitrates. So you could use NDVI to tell nitrates. Oklahoma, the green seeker works really good on wheat. Didn't work so good in Kansas. And the reason is because I had farmers that would use it in Kansas. They would hit sandy areas and that thing would start dumping the fertilizer on. And they would be going like, well, it's not going to matter. I can dump as much fertilizer as I want on that wheat and it's not going to grow anything. So, it thought there was an area where it needed, it didn't see as much NDVI, but it was really plant population it wasn't seeing. And the Kansas farmers knew, don't put any fertilizer there because it's not going to grow anything anyway. The soil's just wrong. So, it wasn't a smart enough sensor to know that. Now, I will tell you, I should mention the green seeker, the way it does work well, and across the board, everybody seems to think it does this. It really wasn't for precision farming, like classifying areas of good and bad growing crops. It was really to zone in on a better nitrate blanket application. Like, somebody would go out there and they say, well, we just put on 80 pounds per acre, because that's what we think we need or we've always needed. Well, they would go in with that green seeker and they would find out we can still get 100% yield with only 65 pounds per acre. They would still do a blanket application, but that sensor would better hone them in on the exact amount of nitrates they needed, and that's where they were getting their savings. So I've done a little bit of that work, and it's a lot of work. Because you got to take the image, usually maybe you had GPS points, maybe it didn't, and you got to go stretch it. And it's more work than you're going to do on large areas. We tried that in Kansas. The problem was we could do it on like a test field, not too bad, but there was no way you were going to apply it to thousands and thousands of acres that a farmer would have. It was just too much work. And that's where there needs to be better, these tools need to be push button. Stitching the images together, and then even decide what to do once you had an image. You didn't always know what the problem was. You didn't know if it was a soil type or nitrates, especially when it comes to dryland crops. If you got dryland crops, there's a lot more variables causing stress in the crop, and it's really hard to know. So you always had to have some ground truthing. Well, it may help you not have to do as much ground truthing, but somebody still had to be out there and have recorded what was wrong. And then it was usually kind of a guesstimate, what you were going to do. You said, well, I think we do or don't need more nitrates there. And the farmer usually had to provide some history on that. Like he knew, well, don't put any there because I know it's not going to grow anything there because there was a barn there and the soil's just too compact, or something like that. You had to marry all that stuff together to get a correct recommendation. And I hate to say it wasn't possible on thousands and thousands of acres. But that's always what we've been striving to get to, and this device will hopefully get us a little bit closer. So. Sure. Okay. Oh, yeah,
Well, I didn't do I've got a buddy who's second in command of the aerial project.